So here we are. It's Friday. We've made it to the end of the week. So all of you that are listening in, you are all champions because you've all made it to the end of the week. And given the world that we now live in, we have no idea what next week may hold for us. And so we are enjoying every day as we find it. And I am enjoying having my good friend Mike Ivey on the other end of my video call here today. And I think it's been a great week. Mike, I certainly had some great feedback. People talking about what we're talking about, which is great. One of the things you said right at the beginning of this week, I think, is if you had one more hour, what would you do with that hour? And I know that spawned some conversation. And I think yesterday we were talking about this thing of being in lockdown with one another, with your family in a home, and some of the things around that. So it might be good to let's kick that ball around a little bit more. I think there's a bit more play time in there. So one of the things that we were talking about earlier was the whole thing of assumptions and how the role that assumptions play in our relationship to one another. So let me throw the ball to your side of the court there, Mike, and you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, look, I think we all know about assumptions, and I think we have more assumptions than we realize. And we have spoken before about, those three P's. And the ways to test assumptions is permanency, pervasiveness, and stop taking this personal. But think about the assumptions we make in the people that we're with in lockdown. And assumptions are going to always hurt us. So we might assume that the way my spouse was yesterday is how she is today, or how she should be today. But I think the more we realize that others who we are with are also going through the turmoil of this and trying to navigate this path, trying to do the dance that we spoke about. And one of the best ways to avoid assumptions is to notice. And I think it's John Maxwell who talks about his 30-second rule. But he says that the first 30 seconds that I'm with a person is just checking, what's the house like? Was there a party the night before and all the furniture is out of place, or is the house neatly organized? And it could be quite a nice game to play. In the first 30 seconds that you're with a person, try and come up with 2 or 3 things that you notice about them. And it could be noticed in terms of body language, could be noticed in terms of something they're wearing, could be noticing just a trait that they're doing. And call it out and say, hey, I notice I noticed what you're wearing. That's amazing.
Mike.
I know we could. But maybe make it a little bit of a game, which try and come up with 2 or 3 things that you notice. Now, here's the interesting thing about noticing. And if you notice a negative emotion and you name it, people will invariably correct you if you've got it wrong.
Yes.
And in some ways, it can be quite connecting because often people know we're not noticing.
I think this is interesting, right? So you're actually talking about testing your assumptions, because we form these assumptions almost immediately. Someone gets up and they're not smiling, and so we assume that they are feeling down, right? Or we gain an assumption. So testing an assumption, and I think that one of the most successful ways of doing that is to say, "It seems to me that, am I right?" Or this is how I'm feeling, I'm perceiving it. What we're not saying is you must be down. You are this. What we're saying is from my side of things, this is my perception. Is it right? Is this where you are? And I think it's good to test our assumptions, with the people that we're in close proximity with, but to do it in a way where they don't feel like they are being judged. There's a big difference between judging someone and testing how you may feel about it. Do you agree?
It's a fantastic point you raised, because there is a danger, and I suppose intent is everything here. If people question your intent, then we're in shaky ground. But if people realize that, hey, I noticed this, and I just want to say I'm here for you, or I notice. But try maybe even just focus then on the positive notices. What are 2 or 3 things I'm going to notice about you, which is affirming? because we all have a need to be affirmed. I believe, Davey, that one of the biggest challenges in the workplace and for us as individuals is so many of us might be going through life feeling like we unnoticed, feeling like the sacrifices we made have not been noticed, feeling like the good work we're doing is not being noticed, just being noticed, and that sense of, hey, I'm here for you. I like the now I've got to be careful here because I could sort of botch this up as well, but I love the Jewish practice of Shiva. Yeah. And what happens here is, do you know it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So and like I say, I hope I'm not getting it totally wrong. Well, you know, if a Jewish person's listening in there, they might say, Mike, you're sort of screwing that up a little bit. But but the way I understand it is, in Shiva, you don't try and fix somebody's mourning. You lament with them. Because everybody needs to have a witness to their lives and to their suffering. Do you think that's good?
I think, and actually it's amazing you say that, because I think a lot of what we experience in this lockdown thing, sometimes we have so many emotions going on. Just to have someone with us, just be there. We don't need to make, you know, the thing about sitting Shiva, I think we probably neither of us saying it right, usually is around death, when someone is grieving, and you go, as I understand it, and the person just sits there. They don't say anything. They don't try to make sense of the situation. They don't try and lessen it or make it more than it is. They don't try to add emotion or take emotion away. They try to be as empathic there as possible. And I think it's important, even when our loved ones that we're staying with are having of the day, that we don't try to make sense of this situation somehow. No, it's okay just to be in the moment, and it's perfectly okay for it not to make sense right now. You know, that's the beauty of that thing, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a beautiful scene in the movie Shall We Dance, with Jennifer Lopez, Richard Gere, Susan Sarandon, but where she finds out that her husband is dancing, and she's full of confusion because she's got all these photographs of Mr. Clark, who's doing ballroom dancing, and the private detective who took the photographs tries to hit on her, and Mrs. Clark sort of puts him in his place, and she talks about marriage, and it goes something like this. She says, of all the 6 billion people in the world, as there were when the movie was made, my husband is the one who notices the unimportant events of my life.
Yeah.
And oh man, you know, it's a beautiful thought. And can we, in lockdown, with the people that we're staying, notice those unimportant events? And Dave, like you said, it's to notice the negative emotions and those things as well, but not to judge them or to try and fix it, but just to say, I notice that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. To be noticed, to be noticed, to be felt. You know, to feel like someone else understands. To be understood. To be noticed. To be understood. I think and then to be loved unconditionally. So here's another good question. What ways do we demonstrate love to those? You know, when you're with somebody day in, day out, you can't say I love you every day, every 5 minutes, you know, because then that takes on no meaning. So how do you demonstrate love? I mean, that would be a great, I'd love to hear from listeners in, you know, what ways do I show love to those around me? And I do think about those 5 love languages. You remember those 5 love languages? Maybe this is a great time for people to explore what are those love languages. You know, is it acts of service? Is it kindness? Words of affirmation? Physical touch? Quality time? You know, those 5. These would be a great time to explore that.
Yeah, and to reconnect with many of the things which drew you to a person in the first place, to celebrate it. I was listening to Adam Grant and Sheryl Sandberg this week, and a beautiful quote which comes out from them, where they say, often we use this phrase, Dave, treat somebody like you want to be treated. And the intention is good and it's great, but probably the better one is, Dave, treat somebody like they want to be treated.
Yes. That's the better one. That is the better one. Yeah.
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 And I think, like you say, the love languages are all about doing or giving love, if we talk Kerry, in a way that Kerry wants to experience love, not in the way that you perceive and see love. And that's where it can be quite difficult, because it's now moving away from your defaults, from a hip hop dance to a waltz or Kerry's dance.
Yeah.
But the beautiful part of this all is when we reach out to another, invariably they're going to reach out towards us.
So that's the principle of sowing and reaping that we talked about, a week or so ago, isn't it? Is that we need to sow out something. We need to sow out love that isn't conditional on us. It's all for the other person. Stephen Covey, great friend of mine. I wish he was. Certainly, I feel like I'm his friend. He has this great line: "Seek first to understand before being understood." It's that seeking to understand someone, seeking to, I want to know you and be known. I think is this thing that we know.
And the funny part is when you say to people, seek first to understand, sometimes the rebellious child within us would say, well, why do I need to understand them? They should be understanding me. But there's this beautiful connotation of lower your seat of power so that you increase your seat of influence. And when you're seeking to understand another person, yes, they might be telling you all their stuff and all their ideas, but invariably by doing that, you are beginning to increase your seat of influence, because Kobe's exact point, by seeking first to understand, they're going to reciprocate invariably.
Exactly.
And you've increased the seat of influence.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing, in these times now, you might need to lower your seat of power, my way, my idea, my remote, my this, my that, and
my seat.
my seat, and maybe
I think the weekend is the time, that we can experiment. Let's do things differently. Let's shake it up. Let's say to the guys, that we are in relationship with, how can I love you in a different way? How can I demonstrate my love in a slightly new way? Even the whole art of surprise, doing something differently, making that effort, being intentional, seeking to understand. I mean, these are all really, really good practices that all of us can do one or two things. And wouldn't it be great if we can all come out of this lockdown with our relationships not just better, but much better than they were before.
Yeah. The hope has to be that we think back on this in a couple of years' time, and we point back to this time as being maybe alchemy to new starts, fresh beginnings. Whilst, again, as we've tried to always say through these talks, we recognize that there's a whole lot of suffering going on. But yeah, that should be the goal. That should be the aim.
Absolutely. Mike, I wish you a great weekend, and I think it's public holiday on Monday, isn't it, for you guys?
It's a public holiday. Yeah, it's a short week. We've got 2 public holidays next week.
Yeah.
But here's the funny part, public holiday and weekday, they're sort of the same thing. Although we have been quite good, I must say. We get to the weekend and we go and work in the garden, clean the pool.
Yeah.
Do that
That's
stuff.
So good.
Yeah. Well, you too, Davey.
Have a fantastic weekend, and we will talk again next week. Look forward to catching up, my friend.
Cool, Davey. Cheers, eh?